Welcome to another episode. Today I'm going to talk to you about my how to tie bass knots, and I use 3 knots when I'm fishing for bass. You know, a lot of people like to use different types of knots for different baits and stuff like that. That's not really necessary. You know, I like to keep it simple. I use 3 different types of knots, and 2 of them is the only 2 types of knots I actually use when I'm tying my line directly to the hook or the bait. So you know, and the third one is the knot I use to join 2 types of line together. So I'm going to show you those 3 today. You know, I mean, I've been fishing since I was 3, and you know, I've always been fine using these 2 knots. That's what I've always used. You know, like when I first started, like I would just tie like a clinch. But I'm talking about when I really started hitting bass fishing hard for the past 4 years, you know, and that's when I'm really talking about my experience. 4 or 5 years ago, that's when I really started to hit it hard, and that's when I really started to grow the passion for bass fishing. So, you know, these knots, they're like I said, the only thing that dictates whether I use one or the other is what type of line I'm using. And I just like to keep it simple, you know. So 2 knots, you don't have to memorize and learn how to tie all these fancy knots and everything. These knots are pretty simple. They're very old. You know, they're old knots, and you know, they're popular knots too. So I'm just going to teach you guys a couple tips and tricks to tying these knots. So let's jump right into it. So, you know, a lot of people think when I'm fishing fluorocarbon, I have to tie, you know, a specific knot for fluorocarbon, and that's fine if you can. But a lot of people say one of the most popular knots for bass fishing mostly, and it's popular for a lot of other fishermen, for bass fishing a lot, is the Palomar and the double Palomar. But a lot of people think I can't tie that using fluorocarbon. Yes, you can. You know, because a lot of people think it'll cut itself. Well, it will if you don't tie it correctly. You know, if you're fishing monofilament and braid, I'll get to that later. I don't tie a Palomar on braid. I tie a double Palomar on braid, because braid will tend to sometimes slip on just a regular Palomar knot. So I'll tie the double Palomar. I'll also show how to show that just a slight little change, and that'll just increase your knot strength tremendously. I have very few breakoffs on braid. And fluorocarbon, you know. Most of the fluorocarbon breakoffs that I have comes from, most of the time, you know, hitting a tree branch when I'm bringing it through, like, you know, abrasion that scuff my line, nick my line a little bit. That's what most of them come from. So here we go. So one of the most important things when you're fishing fluorocarbon, I'm going to talk about that first. If you fish monofilament or even a copolymer, it won't matter as much, but when you're fishing fluorocarbon, when you tie the Palomar knot, you have to make sure you're tying it correctly. And what I mean by tying it correctly, I don't mean by going through all the steps. I mean by a lot of the videos on YouTube, when they teach you how to tie, they don't pay attention to these 2 or 3 little details that'll make the difference from catching the 8-pound bass and not catching the 8-pound bass. And that is to have no twist in your knot. A lot of people, they'll just, you know, run it through, tie the overhand knot, loop it up. You got to make sure you're not twisting your line, because when that line twists, your line is gonna roll over on. It's gonna cut itself basically. But when you have that line perfectly straight, it's kind of hard to explain. I have to show you guys. But when you have all that knot and no line is crossing over when you don't need it to, like I'm talking about like crossing over, that line cannot go up on itself and cut itself. That's what fluorocarbon does. Monofilament does that much, because monofilament stretches more, and that's the reason why the monofilament doesn't do as much. But this will also increase your knot strength with monofilament too. Okay, so guys, I'm going to teach you guys how to tie the Palomar knot. Now, I'm just using braid so you guys can see it easier, because the fluorocarbon or monofilament won't show up as good. So what we're going to do is you're going to take as much line as you need to work with. If you're beginning, it's a little bit easier to take a little bit more line so you have plenty of room to work with. I mean, I need like 4 or 5 inches. So what we're going to do is you want to take your line. So here's your tag in. Take your line, and and then double. All I'm going to do is just double it up like this. So just take your line, and basically what I like to do is just pinch it with my left hand, just like that, nothing, and then just take your hand and just double it up like that. Okay, now this is important. You don't want your line to cross, so you'll know what I mean in a couple seconds here. So make sure that your line is not crossing when I mean that. Hold on, don't pay attention. Alright, make sure your line is straight like that. You don't want some of your line crossed like that when you do it. See how that's crossed right there? You want your line straight, just like that. You don't, because when it's crossed like that and you put it through that's gonna that line's gonna cut itself, and that's why a lot of people think fluorocarbon, you can't tie fluorocarbon with a Palomar, but you can. It's just as strong if you don't cross itself. So make sure it's straight. Okay, I already went over how to do that. So then put your loop through the eye of the hook like I just did. Okay, now this is another chance when you put it through there, you might not realize, but it could straighten up. So what I'll do, I don't even worry about it until I put it through there, and then I'll just take both ends like this and just make sure it's straight. Okay, see, and like it, yeah, well, you'll get the hang of it. You can do it fast. So see how the bottom is going into the bottom, coming out on the other side of the bottom, and then the top is coming in at the top and going out on the other side and staying out on top. It's not twisted. That's what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to just take your knot, like your loop, and your loop on one end, and you have your tag end on the other, and then just tie a simple overhand knot. Okay, and don't cinch it down all the way. A lot of people cinch it down this and improve your knot strength. So then, with that loop that you have, put your hook through the loop, and then take both of your tag end and your main line and just pull it and cinch it on down. And a lot of times you're wet with your mouth or some water to help that from rubbing on the way down. Just go like this and just put your mouth around this and wet right here, or you can just dip it in the water and that'll keep from rubbing the line. And then you just take your clippers. Okay, take your clippers or scissors or knife or whatever you're doing. Just cut off the excess. Those are pretty dull clippers. And then you're done. So that's how you tie knot to fluorocarbon and monofilament. I'm going to show you how to tie that Palomar. Okay guys, so now this knot is for tying braid onto a hook or bait. The other line, even though I was tying it with the braid, I was just doing that so you guys could see it, was for monofilament and fluorocarbon. So this is going to be the same thing. With braid, it doesn't so much as matter if you do twist it like I was talking about, but if you can't help it, don't do it. It'll still improve some knot strength. Then take your line, double it up. We already went over this. So what you just do, take your line and double it up just like that. But that's how we did it before. But what you want to do with this one, it's easier to do the run in and out with this one. So what you can do is you want to run in like that. So now we didn't double it up. We just have one piece of line through there. We didn't double it up. So like I said, just take your take your tag in and put it right through. And what you want to do is you want to come back with your tag in again. Okay, this tag in right here. Come back and come over again and put it through again. This will help from that braid to slip, and that'll just give it a little extra strength. That's called the double Palomar, from that braid to slip, because a lot of times it'll slip. So then all you do is, once it's run through again, so I just came back around and run it through again, take your tag in again and run it through back the way you came to make your loop, so you can tie the Palomar, if you can see that. So then come back and put it through the loop like that, through the eye, through the eye. Let me get this untwisted, it's kind of hard to do it slow. Alright, and then slide down to where it's even, then tie your overhand knot, and then put your hook through the loop, and then cinch on down And that is a strong knot for braid, very strong. I don't suggest tying this on monofilament or fluorocarbon because it tends to not slip. I mean, it doesn't tend to slip. It tends to not be as strong. It's cutting itself a little bit more because you got that loop. But braid's a little bit, it's way more tougher, and this will keep it from slipping. So there you go. Strong knot. Look at that, very strong knot. And that's the best knots that I've found, and what I like to use them for. So now, man, these clippers are dull. So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys how to tie line to line. This knot's called the Knotless Knot. It's a great knot. It's called a knotless knot because it's actually, what's cool about this knot, you never tie a knot. Now you sound, that can't be strong. This knot is strong. I've never had a failure on this knot. I've had a couple, I've had failures on Palomars, double Palomars, but I think probably most of them were because a lot of times when you clip the excess, you'll hit the line with your clippers or knife, whatever, and a lot of times I'll just not tie it right. I'll just miss a step on accident when I'm just going fast, because you tie thousands and thousands of knots, and a couple of them you're gonna do something wrong. So what you want to do, you want to take your monofilament. Actually, I got some monofilament right here. Oh, this is fluorocarbon. I don't know which. This is either fluorocarbon. I think this is mono. So what you're gonna do, just like you did for the Palomar, take your mono or fluorocarbon and just make an eye, just like we were with the Palomar. Then take your braid and put your braid through that eye. Whoops, I missed it. I was looking through the camera. Okay, and then take around, just 5 inches probably, 6, 7 inches, it doesn't matter. And then what you want to do is you want to wrap this braid around that mono 9 times this way, and then go back 9 times that way. So we'll do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So now if you just see what I just did there, come on, focus in. Focus in, focus in. There we go, focus in. There we go. Now, go that way 9 times, and then you want to go back that way 9 times. So this is kind of, it's a little bit tricky to get hang of. So now you want to go back 9 times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Whoops, I missed it. And 9. So what you did is you went this way 9 times and then came back 9 times. Now here's where it gets its name. Knotless knot. With that eye that you originally made, find where the knot, where you originally, focus in, there you go. Find where you originally put the tag in. See that I'm moving right there? That's originally where you put that tag in. This one right here. And you want to put this tag, or where you originally put the line, then you want to put, let me focus that in. You want to put the tag in the way that this line originally came through. So if in sense you never tied a knot, so what you're gonna do is put this line right through there, just like that, and then draw it. So now wet it. Always make sure you wet it, and then you want to pull. Make sure you're pulling your tag in on this end, this tag in right here, and this tag in. You want to pull. You have to pull pretty hard too. And what you'll see happening is this knot will begin to take shape. You have to pull really hard to get this thing tied down. My clickers are crap. So take your foot. So see how small that is? That's so small, so small, and that'll go through your guides really easy. So yeah, these are the knots that you tie. This is for tying a leader. Sorry about my dog, he's barking at something. This is my leader. You tie that in clear water, So thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned some. I'll see you next time. Big Bassmaster 1.